Let's just point out liberals are going to be winning fewer and fewer elections if they keep trying to hammer this square peg into the round hole and tell people, oh, Mr. Trump is so mean with these executive orders. Americans don't want to be overrun by people who are coming here from other parts of the world who don't obey the laws. And you didn't obey the law when they first came here, the way they came here. And if the liberals continue to insist on pushing the envelope on this, look back at the detritus of the last 10 years in this country. Most Republicans, well, most seats in state houses and in local governments across the country are now controlled by Republicans. And in fact, two branches of the executive, we got executive and legislative branch in Washington. Yeah, go ahead. Keep playing wacko out there and trying to convince the American people that they should vote for wackos. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 736-0300. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, there's been a secret agenda, a secret organization, a secret combination that's been in existence since way before Christ. And their bent has always been the captivity and the to enslave the honest people and to get gain from that slavery, so to speak. It's been in existence since time began, and it's going to keep working. And, your caller before said, so what do we do? They're going to fight everything we do. Well, yeah, they're going to fight everything we do, and we have to fight back. We cannot sit back and say, just because they're going to fight it, we're not going to do it. No war was ever won by sitting back and being on the defensive. The only way you win a war or win a ball game or win anything is if you go on the offensive and you take the battle to them and you battle them on their ground and hold them accountable. That's the only way we're going to win anything.
Well, and
I take my hat off to President Bush because he does keep trying.
Thanks for the call. Michael Medved, who hosts a talk show in Seattle, was talking on the air about war one day, and some liberal called him up and said, violence never solves anything. And Medved said, violence solved Adolf Hitler. Okay, well, sometimes violence does, but violence solved Emperor Hirohito and Tojo. And it probably will solve Kim Fatty III. That's what the Chinese press has now started calling the leader of North Korea. He's threatened to blow this country off the map because John McCain called him the crazy fat kid the other day on a TV show. Well, guess what? The Chinese media for some time have been calling him Kim Fatty III, the third in his dynasty. Somebody is eventually going to have to take care of that guy. Ambassador Woolsey, our former CIA director, had a column in The Hill yesterday pointing out this guy could drop an electronic pulse weapon over our country. Sometimes you've got to take care of people in advance. Some sort of preemptive strike. You can't allow that to happen. These are all things you have to be aware of. There are bad actors out there. I'll give you another example of this. The caller makes an interesting point. There are always people, as he pointed out, who are looking to enslave other people. There are people out there who, because of their own wants and their own greed, and we all have an instinct to survive, and sometimes that might mean pushing a guy out of your way if there's one last piece of bread and grabbing it for yourself. Part of the reason this whole thing has come up about Donald Trump and collusion with Russia is because not only liberals would like to get rid of him, but the deep state, as it's called, would like to get rid of him. That is, the bureaucrats in Washington. He threatens their free lunch. He threatens the fact that they've been able to intimidate the American people. He threatens the fact that they will no longer be able to intimidate the American people, or they may lose their job. And that may mean nobody else out there, because right now you're taking care of them. You're paying their salaries. You're giving them their generous retirement benefits. They are colluding with, most of them are fellow traveling liberals anyway, but they are colluding with the Democrats in this country and some other large players around the globe to remove Donald Trump because indeed he poses a threat. Now, our caller there who struggles with English as a second language pointed out that Trump is going to be spying on everybody. Well, we've already learned after the vote on health care last week that Donald Trump isn't quite as powerful as the liberals try to claim he is. Number two, spying? You mean like the British working for President Obama, spying on Trump when he's campaigning? Or the IRS intimidating Tea Party groups on Obama's orders? Is that what you mean? We've already dealt with one despot over the last 8 years. What are you talking about? Bill Colley with you. 20 more minutes left in our program. We'll talk more about this. A couple of other notes, too, as well, about one liberal who's had a come-to-Jesus moment, and she's offended all of her fellow travelers. But on the other hand, she may have put the brakes on the bankruptcy of her city by doing so. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. The show is Top Story. She's relatively new to the job, a mayor in Baltimore, Maryland. You may remember the last mayor of that city. Stephanie Rawlings Blake was part of that scheme to take away the Democrat nomination from Bernie Sanders last year. She was the vice chair of the Democrat National Committee before that disaster. She was also the woman 2 years ago when rioters were burning and looting throughout her city who said, let them get it out of their system. Meanwhile, your business was burning, and she's like, go ahead. Yeah, never mind. Well, it ended her political career. There was talk that she was eventually going to be the governor of Maryland, but it ended her political career. She has been succeeded in office by a woman named Catherine Pugh. The Wall Street Journal has this editorial today. Mayor Pugh, a Democrat, has rejected a bill that would raise the city's minimum wage to $15 an hour. She did so even though she had campaigned in favor of raising it, which shows that economic reality can be a powerful educator. She explained her change of heart by noting that raising the rate would would actually send jobs from her city into neighboring counties. And the increase also would have raised the city's payroll costs by $116 million over the next 4 years, when she's already coping with a deficit of $130 million in her education budget. One local leader called her veto, quote, an act of treason against the poor, the working poor, the underemployed, returning citizens, and single parents, unquote. Well, why would they say that about their fellow traveler? She finally wised up that you can't just keep doing this sort of thing. Oh, it's an affront. We need to force employers to pay this money. Well, what if they leave? Well, we'll force them to stay. This whole notion, this totalitarian strain among liberals. Dude, she saved the jobs in the city is what she did. 944. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. You know, I just think it's amazing how you were saying that someone said that violence wasn't the answer and it was somebody from the left. The last 3 years, every brutal, violent thing that's ever happened in this country has been somebody from the extreme left. And if they can't beat them up, they try to force them or intimidate them into doing something. So I keep saying over and over, anytime one of these guys get on the Philly pulpit and start crying that the right's doing something, open your eyes, because they're doing it and they're trying to distract from what they're doing.
Think about this. You've got peaceful cake bakers and wedding photographers, and they're forced to comply with a certain lifestyle that just is trying to get everybody to come over and crawl into bed with them. You've got people who are going out wearing Donald Trump T-shirts who are getting maced and hit over the head with sticks. You've got Charles Murray, when he shows up to give a speech on a college campus, he's assaulted, or at least his escort is assaulted. You're spot on. And the fact of the matter is, conservatives are showing great restraint.
Well, yeah, you just brought up one great one, about the Trump guy getting maced. What was said that night on the news? It was said that a Trump supporter started the fight. They always go to blaming the opposite side, but yet they're the ones doing it. The peaceful cake maker did not put up a fuss. He just stated a fact that he didn't want to do it. It was the left person that threw a fit, had to sue, had to force, had to do everything. But yet, remember, they are the inclusionary, peaceful people that want everybody to be included.
Well, thank you for the call. It reminds me a little bit about those mayors in Sweden and Germany and places who are telling young women, "Oh well, don't go out and wear miniskirts, because you'll inflame Muslim men and they'll rape you. Better you put on a tent like their women, and then you'll be okay. And tell you what, you Christians shouldn't go to church and talk about Jesus because it'll make your Muslim neighbors mad and they might be forced to violence." It's like the people who say, well, it was Trump's supporters' fault because he wore a Trump T-shirt. Yeah, there you go. If he hadn't worn that racist, bigoted T-shirt, he'd be okay. Yeah, well, the day will come when conservatives think, you know what, we might just fight back. And I'll bring Smith and Wesson along. And then all of the panty waists on the left, after they start wetting themselves and evacuating their underpants, they're going to be in a heap of trouble. 947. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Caller, you're on the air.
Bill, I'm supposed to talk after that. Hey, I just seen a report. Charlie Schumeister, you know who he is. He attacked a woman in a restaurant because he found out that she had voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, the wife of Joe Califano. Califano goes back to, I think, both the Carter White House and even some work in the Johnson administration. And they were at dinner, and Schumer chased her out on the street and kept berating her on the street as well.
Yeah. He's a good guy, isn't he?
And, of course, her husband's got to be about 80 years old, so he doesn't have an ability to haul off and smack Schmucky Chucky. Any real red-blooded American would take a swing at Chuck Schumer, and you'd find out just how manly Chuck happens to be.
Thanks, Bill.
I liked Chuck when he was still on the Muppet Show. You know, waka, waka, waka. Now he's just... Judge Gorsuch is not in the mainstream. I'm in the mainstream. I'm very manly. 948. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number for reaching our program today, 736-0300. Meanwhile, liberals are... Did you hear the story about the the legislator in Massachusetts who was tipping off local illegal immigrants that, that immigration was coming out looking for them? I want the criminals in my district to be able to vote illegally for me and to continue to commit crimes and raping young girls. So I informed them that the evil jackbooted government was out looking for them. She's been called out on it. Somebody tried to start a GoFundMe page for her, and there's no money in it. I don't know why she needs the money. I guess she's going to be facing some campaign opposition from a real American. There was a local sheriff who took issue with her. He testified before the House the other day about this. His name is Thomas Hodgson. He's from Bristol County, Massachusetts. He appeared last night on The Factor with Bill O'Reilly on Fox News Channel. And the sheriff explains how lib politicians are going out of their way to, on purpose, subvert the law of the land.
What exactly did Ms. Dubois do?
Well, Bill, what she did was she sent out an alert saying she had got tipped off that there was going to be an ICE raid on Wednesday in the city of Brockton, and basically said, stay in your house, don't go outside. If somebody knocks on your door and you don't know who they are, don't answer the door. She gave out all kinds of instructions of what to do to avoid the ICE agents if they were to come into that area.
Did they indeed raid Brockton? Was there a raid?
I'm not aware of a raid at this point, but the underlying issue here is that we have an elected official who's gone out of her way not to protect the citizens of her community, but to harbor people who are targeted and not only putting ICE agents at risk because we need the element of surprise. When we go to a place, if we're dealing with some heavy-duty transnational gangs involved in sex trafficking or the other things that are going on out there, we don't want to come up on some arsenal where they're prepared and seriously injure or kill any of our law enforcement people.
Well, they don't care about law enforcement. Law enforcement is like those business owners we talked about at the top of the program, just evil exploiters, so they deserve whatever they get, right? Lefty's view on all of this. 10 minutes away from 10 o'clock now. We're at 49. Going to have a temperature dropping later today into the upper 30s, maybe even some snow showers spitting at times. Over the next few days, things will gradually improve, and by the middle of next week, we're back into the mid-60s throughout the Magic Valley. I just want to mention weather, of course, brought to you by Mountain Home Auto Ranch in Mountain Home. As I was listening to that, and I was thinking about all of this defiance of the government and these sanctuary cities, and we have people who used to rail about states' rights, and now they think that they should have states' rights, or at least cities' rights, or counties' rights. I read every morning as part of my show preparation a website called Real Clear Politics, which is a high-end version of the Drudge Report. Too many talk show hosts rely on the Drudge Report, exclusively the Drudge Report, to do their work for them. I would prefer to look at something a little more in-depth. There were liberal columnists when we had those folks a year ago who took over the Malheur Wildlife Refuge in Oregon, who were demanding that the federal government go in and gun those men down for defying the government. So why can't we as conservatives demand that the government go in and start gunning down city councils in Seattle and San Francisco? Because those of us on the right, we aren't that kind of people. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on Top Story.
Did you ever notice the pivot point where the liberals changed their mind about Russia?
They did it just a few years ago.
Yes, it was when Russia passed anti-homosexual litigation.
Russia also started taking on the Muslim terrorists, too.
Yeah.
That seems to, thank you for the call, seems to have been Russia's turning point, because when Hillary Clinton was selling them our nation's stores of uranium as her husband was collecting huge speaking fees over there, Russia was just wonderful. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, since the travel ban was put on hold, why don't we send all of the refugees to Hawaii and Washington till things loosen up?
Well, they'd really enjoy that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, might change some judges' tunes a little bit.
I thank you much for the call. They'd have crime in the streets, rampant crime, not just because all of these people are criminals, but some will be, and they will add to the crime that takes place. And when that happens, how do you then explain it to your population? Once again, I told you the story yesterday. Liberals are okay with you dealing with all of the fallout from their policies. We shared the story. Glenn Beck had this posted at the Blaze yesterday. A liberal columnist who's been promoting having grown men go in and use the public potties next to your little girls. You know, guys who got a squat to pee, they've already had some serious issues in their lives. She had been promoting that policy across the country until she was at Disneyland and had some small children with her, and some guy followed her into the ladies' room. And all of a sudden she was, oh, dear, Well, now you see how it feels. You think it's good for everybody else, but when it happens to you, it's suddenly bad. If that was your daughter in that restroom in Rockville, Maryland, you wouldn't be sitting here today screaming about sanctuary cities either. But most of you people out there, you limousine liberals, and right here in Twin Falls, they live in gated communities where they live in neighborhoods where they don't generally have to deal with this. They don't. If you live down on the lower President Street, on the other hand, well, you deserve it. Because you aren't as swanky as they are. You don't sip Cabernet and discuss all of the really important issues in life while you're patting each other on the back, telling each other how wonderful and kind-hearted you happen to be. There's that old, I hear it once in a while, still pops up now and then on the Rush Limbaugh show, one of his classic old spoof commercials where John McCain's talking about amnesty and the guy starts screaming, McCain, El Presidente, El Presidente. And he says, gosh. He said, you say you'll do the whole job for the whole yard for $5? That's what they're looking at. How about North Carolina, where the liberals are trying to tell them, if you don't open your bathrooms up again to perverts, that you're going to lose a lot of money. I read some figures on that the other day. It turns out it's less than 0.6% of the overall economy that would be lost by the threatened boycotts. Big deal. They'll grow some more tobacco and make up the difference. 9:55. You may be our last caller of the morning. You're up next on Top Story.
Morning, Bill. Hey, I was just going to make a comment about these guys having to use little girls' bathroom. they do that, they've never worked a real long, hard day at work and enjoy peeing underneath the starlit sky when they get home at dark on a tree side somewhere. So, got to enjoy the hard-working men in America. Have a good day.
Hey, thank you. When I was a young man, my dad and we built a house, and we built it against a hillside. Dad was a pretty shrewd guy. You know, he had dropped out of high school, got his GED in the Army, and then years later, he never finished college, but he got enough of, you know, he was going to college nights while he was working and raising kids. And but he'd pretty much learned everything he needed to know about building a house on his own from the ground up. He was a brick mason. He could pour concrete. We could smooth the concrete out. We could let the concrete cure. He was a carpenter. He was an electrician. He was a plumber. He had all of these things. He was self-taught. So we built a house just after I graduated. We started the morning after my graduation from high school, and we built a house. And after college, you know, it was my home away from home. I'd go back for weekends and vacations there. And we had this lovely house. We built it across the road from a lake. You could overlook the lake. And we built it up against it was called Mount Monroe. We built it up against the mountainside. And the dirt was piled around the ground floor. The front of the house, though, was still open on both floors. But that ground on three sides built into the hill helped keep that house. You didn't need air conditioning in the summer, and it was easy to heat in winter. It was a wonderful plan that he came up with. The second floor of the house, when he first built the house, he eventually put in another bathroom, or actually two, because he built an addition on. But in the beginning, the house was simply just a box with a front porch and a back deck. And you had to get up in the morning, and if you got up, you ran downstairs to use the toilet. It was at the bottom of the stairs and across a hall. So for a time, it was just my dad, my brother, and I living in the house. And if somebody woke up in the morning, because the second floor, all the bedrooms were lined up one after another, if you woke up in the morning, everybody else would wake up when they heard you get up and walking around. So 3 men in the house, after sleeping all night long, generally had to use the bathroom together. So instead of waiting in line down at the bottom of the stairs, we just got in the habit, if somebody else had gone downstairs, we'd swing open the back door, we'd walk out, and we'd relieve ourselves off the deck. And I'm nearsighted. I'll never forget one morning I did that, and I was outside, and I was suddenly startled. It was foggy, and I heard all of this noise. And in my nearsightedness, I looked around, and there was a herd of deer standing there watching me. I was listening to their hooves as they were walking around, and they seemed to be most mystified by what I was up to. But nobody was harmed by that. Bill Colley with you on Top Story, and every man out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anywhere in the forest, it's just a big, wide open lavatory. God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this all over again tomorrow morning here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Rush Limbaugh follows the news at 10 o'clock from Fox.